Hello. My goodness.
Hi, and
No.
thank you so much for
Hold
having me.
on.
I've been excited about this all
Hold
week,
on,
and this is so
Andrea.
good.
Hold,
Yes.
hold on. I love this. I love it. I'm so excited. Hold on. Let me do the introduction and then we bring you back in. Just hang on a second.
Okay. Mhm.
All right. So I shared this past week how a psychiatrist prescribed medication for me to be able to go to Walmart with less discomfort. I promise you, though, I really don't need medication to go to Walmart. And I was laughing at the doctor for being so quick to push medicine. And I was laughing at myself even more for having the nerve to actually fill the prescription, right? So, honestly, I filled it in case I got an anxiety attack, not related to Walmart, but I stopped laughing when I reflected on the fact that some people do have serious fears of going to places like Walmart enough to need medicine for it. So for those people, it is not funny. Feeling like large, open, or crowded spaces are unsafe or overwhelming to be in, so much so that they avoid going altogether or they may need medication to manage. But we're going to talk about some very unusual phobias this episode, things you wouldn't think that would be afraid of, but there are people whose lives are severely affected by these fears. Hello, Marilyn, and welcome. Big up yourself, kings and queens, and self enthusiasts, and welcome to another episode of the Big Up Yourself Show, where we encourage self prioritization, self love, self knowledge, self leadership, learning to be the very best you, and taking full responsibility for the choices you make that materialize into the life that you lead. We cover human interest stories and we are sympathetic to the human condition over here. I am your host, Winsome Alexander, also known as the Big Sister. I'm a self empowerment mentor, a self enthusiast, passionate about self improvement and advocacy for adults surviving childhood abuse. I'm certified one of Texas's most inspiring women for work with trauma survivors since 2008. And you're welcome to subscribe and be a part of a growing and supportive community. Look, our lives are fire, fire. So light it up with a like or like like the live or like the replay and leave a comment because your comments do matter. And we literally survive off of comments. And welcome D of H and D abroad. So, phobias. What is a phobia? What are some common and uncommon phobias? And how do we manage them so they don't overrun our lives? A phobia is an intense and irrational fear of a specific object, situation, or activity. It goes beyond the normal fears and can cause significant distress or impairment in daily life. Phobias can develop from various factors, including genetics, traumatic experiences, or learned behaviors. Some common phobias, most of us are aware that there are some people who are afraid of spiders, and that's called arachnophobia. Fear of heights is another common one. Acrophobia, fear of confined spaces, claustrophobia, and fear of, which is the most common of them all, fear of public speaking, which they call glossophobia. And this one, and by the way, guys, I'm going to be chopping up words this entire episode. I cannot pronounce some of these words. This one is Pteromerhanophobia, fear of flying. And I don't know why they had to make that word so freaking complicated. Why couldn't it be just something like phobia or something like that? Anyway, So those are some common, and we all know of agoraphobia, the fear of leaving the house. And I don't know just how common it is, but agoraphobia, but it's an anxiety disorder characterized by a fear of situations or places where escape might be difficult or help might not be available. However, it can also be part of other anxiety disorders or phobias, such as social anxiety disorder or specific phobias related to leaving familiar environments. So, social anxiety appears to be a phobia as well, right? Also known as SAD or social phobia. Social anxiety disorder, SAD, or social phobia. But my guest today is a sister friend, and I never knew until recently some of the things that make getting through her day so challenging, even as a therapist herself. And so let's just get through her bio real quick. Dr. Andrea Dr. Andrea Richard is a faith based clinical counselor and biblical therapist. Now, faith based therapists are hard to find. So, if you're a person who prefers that type of therapy, here's a resource for you here today. She is also the CEO of Kingdom Concepts Empowerment Coaching, LLC, and a motivational speaker. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Wow, I'm listening to the bio and I'm like, I need to go see her. Thanks for that awesome, warm welcome.
I
It is
know,
so
right?
good to be here. It's so good to see you. I feel like we don't get to see enough of one another.
That's the truth. That's the truth. And I'm so glad that you made time to be with us here today because yeah, I
Absolutely.
know how busy your schedule is. So, as is usual, on the Big Up Yuself Show, we start with a little background of your name. So, why don't you tell us about your name? Tell us how you pronounce it, who named you, and was there a story about your naming, and how do you sit in your name today?
Well, my name is pronounced Andrea Richard, and Andrea was my given name. My mother named me, and my middle name is Marie. I'm named after my godmother, who is a very big influence in my life, and it means womanly. And so I sit in my womanhood and who I have become. My last name is Richard, that, of course, I acquired from my husband.
Yay! I love that your name means, I never knew that the name Andrea meant womanly. I never knew
Mhm.
that. And
Mhm.
I'm glad to know that you actually sit in your name. And from what I know of you, yes, you are indeed womanly. So
Thank
thank you
you.
for sharing that with us. So, um, um, just about all of us have some fear or the other, right? No
Yes.
one is exempt, I don't believe. Um, you might even have some phobias. You, the viewers, you might even have some phobias that you just deal with and think is just you, right? And I'll share a couple of mine later that I didn't know were true phobias. But first, let's hear from Dr. Andrea, a therapist who has her own phobias that she manages. Andrea, did something trigger your first phobia? Or when did your first phobia appear, and when did you notice that they were overwhelming?
Well, I would say that my first phobia appeared as a child. I would say no more than age 5. Of course, I didn't know at that time that it was a phobia or
Right.
exactly what was going on. And so I would say would say as early as the age of 5, but I was more afraid of not doing what my mother said than whatever phobia was going on in that moment. So I would shut my eyes tightly and just proceed the best way that I could.
Yeah. So at 5, you're saying that your first phobia was like fear of not doing what your mother said?
No, a fear of large
Uh-oh. Are we going to have internet issues today?
or even bookshelves or anything that's large that seems like it could consume or engulf me. And I remember my mother asking me to go into the room and bring her something.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even remember what the something was, but it was in a place that triggered all kinds of fears and phobias. And it wasn't necessarily the dark, it was dark in the room, but that wasn't the prevalent thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
when my mom shouted out, hurry up because we have to go, and so I had to pass by the object, which in this case was a large bookshelf filled with books. And so I closed my eyes, kind of felt my way, grabbed it, and ran out of the room. And
Mm-hmm.
from that point on, there were a lot of objects that were kept in that space. And so I would do all kinds of things to avoid going to that space because I just knew that if I told my mom, please don't make me go in there or don't make me go to that shelf because I'm afraid, she would have been like, afraid of what? That's just crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
so at that point, I began to develop coping mechanisms. And at that time, I couldn't have called it that. I didn't know what it was until much, much later. But that was the
Mm-hmm.
beginning.
So that was the beginning. Now, but you were only 5
Yes.
when that started. So you couldn't quite pinpoint, was there a particular incident that's got you to start fearing these large objects? You just knew that you went into the room and that those shelves were overwhelming for you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then as you developed, as you grew into yourself, what were some of the other things that also became too much for you to handle?
Being in band, I was in band and I played the clarinet and the bass clarinet. And I sat when I played the bass clarinet in front of the tuba section. But strangely enough, the tubas, weren't fearful to me. But we watched a film in band and I saw and heard the kettle drums. And so the sound of them, as if something were encroaching upon me, is how I would describe it now. I didn't have a voice for it, a word for it at that time. And within that was a harp. And the sounds of the harp, whereas some people find them soothing and beautiful, and I don't find them soothing and beautiful. So it was the sound of the kettle drums and the harp simultaneously encroaching. And so I don't know if that was something I thought that I had developed in my mind, but then I realized that I didn't like the harp. Now, what's interesting and how I know that the chief anxiety is the megalophobia, because any of those things in small qualities or quantities would be fine. Like if I were able to shrink them down to the size of a hand sanitizer or something, those objects in themselves don't feel as threatening. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So it's the scale of the objects that bother you.
Yes.
So with
Yes.
regards to the harp,
Hmm.
did the size of the harp bother you too, or it was just the sound?
I think I associated the sound with those kettle drums and that coming, but I think it is the harp in general. The shape of it, but certainly the large ones. But even one that would be like knee high or something, I would avoid contact with it.
So the very shape of the harp is a problem for you. That's interesting. I found out
Yes.
too that there is a fear of flutes And
Mhm.
one would think that the flute is a harmless object, but apparently there's actually a name for the
There's a name for the harp
flute.
as well.
Really? What's that called?
Yes. Um, I I think it's pronounced a paraphobia. It's ARPAP.
Uh-huh.
Then there's another name. I don't recall what it is now that starts with a G, but it has to do with the whole string instrument
Wow.
family. But it doesn't apply to me because violins are fine. However, a cello is not fine. And that's because of the size of the cello.
Mm. Now,
And so then there are, that makes it, those intertwining type phobias.
and what is the term you give to the large object thing? Megalophobia. We're having internet issues.
Okay.
We're having some internet issues. You said I was asking you what is the name given to the fear of large objects?
Megalophobia.
Megalophobia. When did you find out that there was a name for that and that fit your situation?
About 3 years ago, when
Really?
about 3 years ago, and I'm 56 years old now. And so
Uh-huh.
that's how long ago. And the doctors believed that I'd had a TIA, a transient ischemic attack, which is a stroke. And I had no symptoms other than blurred vision in one eye. And so I was going to have an MRI. And I was feeling terrified at the fact that, stroke, all that I know about a stroke is that people are paralyzed, all of that. But I'm walking around talking. I drove myself to work. And when I called my doctor to see if I can get an eye appointment and I told him my symptoms, he said, go straight to the ER. I went to
Mhm.
urgent care and they wouldn't even let me drive. They transport me by ambulance. But despite all of that urgency, I was unable to get into the MRI. I already knew that I have a fear of enclosed spaces, but they wanted to
Uh-huh.
do a CAT scan first.
Mhm.
And when I walked in the room, and the CAT scan took up most of the space in the room. And so, despite all of this that was going on, I was not able to easily get into the CAT scan, which didn't pose a particular problem with it being an enclosed space because it was narrow. It wasn't, as deep. And
Yeah.
so I had to be medicated, and my husband had to sign a waiver to be able to stay in the room with me.
Mhm.
And so I went from the CAT scan to the MRI, which was in an even larger room. Then I discovered this room is too large. And it made the MRI seem smaller at that point, though. But they said, okay, get in. And my husband was standing there. And they said, we're going to show you pictures. Well, the first picture that comes up are these bombastic mountains. And so I'm inside of this MRI, and they give you glasses where you look what and see what's behind you. And so imagine behind me that whole wall back there being mountains. And
Okay.
I was going to be inside there with my back to them.
Oh my goodness. Talk about like no escape. So,
Yes.
first you're in a small space, then
Hmm.
you're in a larger space, which is another problem. Then you make your way into the machine, and the thing that they give you to calm you down while you're in the machine
It's
is
not
a
working. And
Ooh.
the medicine that they're giving me is not working. And so they gave me a shot of Ativan. Yeah, it was called Ativan. I'd never had Ativan before, but I've since read about it. And, it was a hefty dose and it was injected. And so I felt loopy, in the room, like, oh my goodness. But immediately when I got in that room and saw that machine, it's like I came, I'll say sobered up for lack of a better term, because I was feeling, like I was dazed and confused on the medication, but it did not work. And it took for my husband to stand there behind me, because I knew that it was him. And like with the MRI, and they slide you in, and my face had like a catcher's mask over it so they could take images of my brain. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't get out, but I knew that my husband would get me out. And so I was able to calm down, and I kept asking, how much longer, how much longer? And each segment was like 15 minutes, and they had to pull me out and allow me to recuperate for about 10 minutes before I went back in. And so it was very kind of them, because they're a hospital, they're busy, they have other people to
Right.
see. And so that took so long because I had to be pulled out and allowed to calm down. My husband had to talk me through it and then put me back in.
Wow.
And so despite everything that was going on and the fact that time was of the essence, if I'm having a stroke, all
Yes.
of that overrode what was going on.
Oh my goodness. And I think that, yeah, that was quite a traumatic experience. I think that there are a lot of people who have issues with those machines. Why do they have to make them so tight, though? Seriously, so tight and so loud.
And well, this one was a new one, and it was a little bigger than the normal ones.
Yeah.
It was kind of comfortable. And
Uh-huh.
so, to answer the question, after that, I got out, and I'm like, I need to look this up. And of course, you see the fear of enclosed spaces,
Mm-hmm.
but I specifically felt like the objects were large. Like when I go to the gynecologist's office, or I remember having surgery and I wasn't asleep when they brought me in the room, and I didn't know that all of the instruments overhead were so large. And so I just one day typed in fear of large objects, because
Yeah.
that's all I could think of. And there was an actual phobia.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness. But now, okay. So you're telling us some of the things that you fear.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like things keep adding and adding and adding. Okay. So the fear, I'm trying to find the commonality. The fear of the the fear, okay, somebody says it's is sound sensitivity also associated with autism spectrum disorder?
And
I
that
don't
was
know.
what I was talking with you about the other day, how people are sometimes on a spectrum, for certain things. But it wasn't so much like the sound of the MRI machine or those things. It was just upon sight of
I
even
think
seeing
he
it.
was referring to the harp, the sound of the harp.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, yeah, yeah. So um Agent Marilyn says she also thinks it sounds like a form of autism. I have no idea. I have no idea. Have you ever like looked into that?
I absolutely have, and I was tested because once all of those things came to into the
Yeah,
picture and into play, I don't have any of those. I'm not on that
not
spectrum
on
at
the
all,
spectrum at
or
all.
Asperger's or any of those things.
Wow, interesting. So, okay, so there's the harp, and there's the fear of large objects, and there's the fear of enclosed spaces. What else? It sounds like there is, okay,
Mice, mice.
mice too. Kept coming up this week. That one kept coming up this week. A lot of people are saying they're afraid of mice. I don't like them either, girl. And
And it's
you,
called Mirophobia. And it's
oh,
actually just even the thought of when I was looking it up, I'm like, okay, I hope the picture, the image doesn't show up. And so I have learned how to navigate, all of those situations on a daily basis. Like they don't stop me from living, but they are present in my thoughts. And
they're
I
present.
had to learn coping strategies to, just go through the day.
Now, you told me that there is such a thing as the fear of trees. I
Mhm.
found out, and I only found this out since talking to you. And the fear of trees is dendrophobia. Most
But I
likely,
don't actually have the fear of an actual tree. It's
right,
the size of the tree.
is the size of the tree.
Hmm.
But the dendrophobia is most likely caused by a negative experience with the tree for most people.
Hmm.
And I imagine, if a tree falls on your house or your car and you barely escape, that could cause you to fear them, right? In your case, the size of the tree, let me see if I find a slide of an example of a tree that bothers you. The size of the tree. Tell me, why does this tree bother you? If it's not too much for you to visit at this time. If it is, let me know.
Well, in the picture, it doesn't feel as threatening as passing by it on a daily basis. Passing by my home, and
Yeah,
it's just the bombastic size of it.
the
If that
size.
tree were a small tree, or like the size of a plant, it wouldn't bother me at all. If there were a whole forest and it was shrank down to a small size, it wouldn't bother me. And that's how I was able to determine that it was megalophobia. And I do have a therapist, and she confirmed it, because it is an irrational fear of large objects such as animals, buildings. It could be anything. And that's the thing with
Oh,
megalophobia. It doesn't have like a generalized thing, like being afraid of mice or being afraid of heights. That's that one singular thing. With
uh-huh.
megalophobia, it's multiple objects, but it's based on their
The
size.
size. Okay.
And
Now,
it's having that intense fear.
what is so threatening to you about this sign right here? The
The
height
size,
of it, the
the
size of
size,
it, the
because
size.
it's taller and wider than I am.
And so if you enter a room with a sign like this, you're
I would just do a side step to go around it generally, or I wear shades a lot because dark shades tend to lessen the impact.
wow. And this pillar right here, if you
Mhm.
have to pass by
Same.
this pillar,
Like, I'm able to walk out of the credit union in that case and go to my car and go on, but there's a thought when I drive up. Okay, there's that thing. Um,
wow.
I don't get back in the car, and go home, but those could all have the propensity, if I didn't have coping skills in place, to be able to deal with it.
Now, this one I find interesting.
Hmm.
This is in your home.
Yes.
This is a piece of furniture that's in your home. How do you deal with this in your home? But also, you say that the draperies, because of the height of the draperies, that's also troublesome for you.
Yes. That dining room table is probably close to 20 years old, and I absolutely loved it when I saw it on the showroom floor.
Yeah.
And there was nothing in particular that was troublesome about it. As you know, in the furniture store, there's lots of furniture. Although that's a big space, it's filled with things.
Hmm.
And so I wasn't impacted by it at all. But when I got it home, and then it was taking up the space in the room, I thought, well, that's a little interesting.
Wow.
And even to go near it, sometimes I
Yeah.
feel like psychologically overwhelming sense of that I'm going to faint, or I may become like sweat. The physical symptoms may be my heart racing, um, and it's megalophobia because it's an irrational fear, because there's nothing rational about it, and I
Mhm.
intellectually understand all of that, but it doesn't stop those physical and psychological symptoms from being present.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with on a daily basis. Are there new? Are there new? Well, actually, is basically the one or two fears, but it's just multiple objects within the category.
Right. And that's what makes the megalophobia different, because it's not a specific thing.
Yeah.
And the actual definition says a type of anxiety disorder in which a person experiences intense fear of large objects. Anxious occurrences happen when you think that you may be around the large object, and they can be animals, statues, vehicles, and it's not a standalone or a distinct condition because there are so many varied objects.
Mm-hmm.
For example, statues, like I don't like statues, even the small ones, but I can
Yeah.
tolerate the small ones. And I wasn't even aware of that until visiting a Catholic church where there are lots of statues.
Wow. Mm-mm.
But the good news is that you can manage, all of those things. As I stated, they are present, but they have not stopped me from pursuing my goals and
Yes.
moving forward in life.
Yay. Yay. I'm glad to know that. I'm glad to
Yes.
know that. So there is hope for all of us. I see people in the comments are listing their fears and stuff. I'm gonna
Mhm.
get to those because I'm very interested to find out what other people's fears are. I
Mhm.
wanted to go over a few of mine, and there are about three or four major fears that I had personally harbored for years. And one was a very common one, the fear of heights. A lot of people are afraid of that one. I'm still afraid of that one for sure. Um, yeah, almost everybody I know, almost everybody knows somebody who is afraid of heights. Then there is the fear of homelessness, which they call peniophobia or domatophobia. Apparently, this is a serious concern for a lot of people. But I've overcome, man, we are something else. We are something else as humans. I helped my own self overcome this one with the belief, with the thought that um, I truly only become homeless by choice if I didn't want to go and live with someone else. Then I had fear of the future, which was a persistent, overwhelming obsession with what was going to happen to me in the future. And I didn't know it was a thing until one day I said, let me just look this up if there's. Turns out a lot of it is a thing, and it's called chronophobia, fear of the future, and there are a lot of people who suffer from it. And I've also overcome this one by choosing to believe that I will always be okay as long as I'm alive. But I had that intense fear of the future for so long, and yeah, never knew it was an actual term for it, right? Um, and then four, I've also in large part worked through glossophobia, the fear of public speaking, where I went through a period of having panic attacks and crying in the bathroom because I had to give a presentation at work. And I believe that that particular fear, the glossophobia, the fear of public speaking, was a learned fear because I wasn't always afraid, as a child, being on stage. And truth be told, I believe I was born to be on stage. So developing social anxiety or fear of being seen and heard was something learned through traumas, right? So some of our phobias stem from our brain chemistry, right?
Absolutely.
We seem to be wired that way, but some of them are learned, and something traumatic happened to us that freaked us out enough to cause I'd say a form of PTSD. And I thought about PTSD, and the fear of parents came to mind. Fear of
Mm,
parents came to mind.
wow.
So I looked it up. Sure enough, fear of parents is a thing. The fear of parents, of fathers, is called patriarchophobia. I'm not pronouncing these right words correctly. And the fear of your mother is matricophobia, right? Um, and these fears, as you were saying, they could stem from various factors, including past experiences, trauma, or anxiety, and parental authority. So now let me see what the audience is saying about the things that they fear. Um, let's see. Donna says, yes, sound sensitivity is associated with autism spectrum. I have an 8-year student. Is it 8-year-old that is sensitive to thunder and lightning? There's that fear too, fear of thunder. I forgot what that one is called. That's a thing too. B says, I'm the same way about snakes. She gets nightmares about snakes. That's a common one too. Oh my God. Question. Dr. Andrea, where can we find you? I'm searching for your website or business. I have a phone number for her that I am going to list right now. Let's see. Here is her phone number to her business. This is where you can find Dr. Andrea Richard if you'd like to make an appointment. Let's see. Um, okay, hold on a second. Let's go back up. All right. Okay. Um, Donna says, I had a fear of pools until I took swimming lessons. I found out, Donna, and I think I listed it here. I'm going to go over it in a little bit, that there is such a thing as fear of pools as well. I forgot the name of it. So that's a thing. But you got over it by taking swimming lessons. Good for you. Good for you. Proud of you. Yay. And then Donna says, I had a fear of heights too until I climbed Mount Fuji in Japan. Well, I guess that would do it. I guess that would do it. Shoot. Okay. Question, Andrea. Is aging part of developing phobias like fear of crowds, closed spaces, like elevators? You were saying that you're afraid of elevators too, or germs in public spaces. What about the elevator? Is it so scary for you? Andrea? We're stuck. Someone's asking, is getting older a contributing factor to developing phobias?
I think sometimes it possibly could be, as people start to become aware of their own mortality. You know how kind of when you're younger, you think you're invincible, and all of those things. So it certainly could, as other issues arise, it could certainly lead to that.
Yeah. Donna says she can't do zip lining. I did zip lining. I don't think I'll do it again. Because why? And then Donna says, I won't.
But see, interestingly enough, that
go ahead. Go ahead, Andrea.
Oh, interestingly enough, in the elevator, I would prefer to be on the outside. You know how there are those see-through elevators? and you're on the outside, I would rather be in an elevator on the outside than enclosed on the inside.
What do you mean in an elevator on the outside?
And I don't particularly like high heights, but
what do you mean outside of the elevator instead of inside? You mean not get on the elevator at all?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And then you have some people who are afraid of escalators. I'm a little funny on those too. So what do you have to do? What do you do when you have to take an elevator? Do you just completely avoid them?
For the most part, I do.
Yeah.
There are times when I can't. I never know until I get to the elevator, and I already had that discomfort about it, but I actually got stuck in an elevator, and so that's what led to the intense fear of it. Because I was at work and we were stuck for like 30 minutes, and I was the manager and I had my staff on board, and so I had to hold it together. So I managed to do that because I knew that I had to keep the people I was in charge of their well-being, and so I was able to pause my own feelings in that moment and move forward. So much so till I went years later to a job interview in that same building, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go to the interview. But when I saw the address, it was alarming. And when she said, okay, we're going up to such and such floor, I was telling myself, I can do this. That's been a while ago. And, just talking to myself, I've got water with me and snacks. If we, I'm doing all this self-talk. And then the elevator door opens on the very same elevator that I was stuck in. And I said, I'm not going to be able to do this today. I'm so sorry.
Wow. So you didn't go to the interview?
I did not. I was there with the lady, but I could not go upstairs.
Oh my.
And so I had to.
Yeah, she cut out. She cut out there. Let's see. You cut out for a while after you said you were there with the lady, and you couldn't go.
Yes, I was there with the lady, and when the very same elevator opened that I got stuck in that time, I wasn't able to move forward in that process. But I've since then taken exposure therapy, where you're exposed to things a little bit at a time. But the enclosed situation, I try to avoid that at all costs. For instance, riding in the back of a car, I have to, if I'm going to be in the back seat, there has to be a door that I can control, not just let the seat up and get in the back.
And that fear is that claustrophobia?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm going to ask you to describe exposure therapy in a little bit.
Okay.
But let me see. Donna says she won't shake hands because of fear of germs. I was reading about famous celebrities who have phobias, and I forgot who it was too that has that fear of germs. And people are supporting one another in the chat. H&D, Donna, she says she's proud of Donna. I love that. Let's see. D says, I have avoided church because hugging and shaking hands, especially after the pandemic. Oh my goodness. Avoided church because of hugging. But I never hug and shake hands when I go to church. When I used to go to church. How did I get away with not doing that? All right. Okay, so people are saying that they developed the fear of germs after COVID. And then the co-living life says mine was heights until I moved to California and started local day hikes in the Santa Monica Mountains. Following behind a man. So glad I was able to conquer it. Good for you. Good for you. I'm still afraid of heights. Hey, Dee. Let's see. Okay, and she's greeting everybody. Let's see. And this is D of Brown Girls Invest Too. Um, I have trouble. I have trouble getting in an MRI machine. We were talking about that earlier, D. I didn't think I was claustrophobic until I realized I have trouble breathing in an MRI machine. Yes. Dr. Andrea was telling her story about that MRI machine too. Ah, Donna says Howie Mandel is the celebrity. Okay. Yes. Other than that, I have a fear of not having access to my money. Well, I guess, right? Oh my God. Now, doctor, they're asking, have you been able to overcome any of your fears, or do you just deal with them?
I just mostly manage them. And I think that the triggers or symptoms can be there. And I would say that I overcame the intensity of them, or I wouldn't be able to live throughout the day to day.
Yeah.
And so I'm aware of those triggers, but they don't stop me from moving forward in life.
Good for you.
The elevator one is one that it depends on the elevator in the day.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And so some days are worse than other days, right?
Yes, and they're all rooted in anxiety, I believe. And I do not take any type of medication. The doctor at one time prescribed medication for me, but I didn't take it because I don't want to ever be. I'm a substance abuse counselor as well, and I don't want to become addicted to any substances. And so also prayer and meditation, meditating on the word that God hasn't given me a spirit of fear. And so that's how I'm able to move through life.
Yes. Meditating on the word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were talking about some famous, you brought it to my attention, some you shared with me this article of some famous people and their fears. And one that astonished me was Matthew McConaughey is afraid of tunnels and revolving doors. I can't imagine Matthew McConaughey being afraid of revolving doors, right? And it made me think of, I don't know if any of you have seen the show, this Korean show on Netflix called, I think it's The Amazing Attorney Woo. And she is autistic and she was terrified of revolving doors. And but I thought she was terrified of the doors because she was autistic. But imagining Mr. Cool, Mr. Hot Stuff, Matthew McConaughey afraid of revolving doors. But then, I think whose idea was it anyway to have revolving doors? When you really think about them, damn revolving doors, they're really kind of disconcerting. And
it kind of involves being enclosed in a space.
Yes, that's it. That's exactly it. That little triangular space that you have to enter when you go through one of those doors. You're exactly right. And some people are afraid of escalators. Sometimes I am too. I mentioned that. And then there's Michael Jordan, who's afraid of the ocean. I am too, by the way. Don't take me cruising. I don't think I can, right? But Michael Jordan has been afraid of the ocean ever since he witnessed a childhood friend drowning. And I think that's it for me too. I watched a movie as a child where people drowned, and now I just can't get how people can be so comfortable out there. There's also the fear of water, which they call aquaphobia. I think Donna mentioned the fear of the swimming pool. Carmen Electra experiences panic attacks at the sight or thought of being near water. And I don't know why some people insist on living near large bodies of water. I don't get it. Nicole Kidman is afraid of butterflies. And I have a sister who is afraid of butterflies too. Keanu Reeves and Megan Fox are afraid of the dark. And Megan Fox also hates anything to do with paper, especially the sound of paper tearing. Imagine being afraid of paper. The sound of paper tearing. Madonna is afraid of thunder. Somebody else mentioned that earlier. They're afraid of thunder. Billy Bob Thornton, here's an interesting one, is afraid of antique furniture and can't stand being in a room with them. But guess what? So am I. So am I. I also cannot stand antique furniture. Could not live with them. I wouldn't say I'm afraid of them. I'm not phobic. I just don't like them. And I remember in design school, in interior design school, when we studied art history and early furniture designs, and in my projects, I automatically put a modern spin on all the traditional designs because I abhor old stuff and definitely can't stand antiques. So I kind of get Billy Bob on this one. Pamela Anderson is afraid of mirrors. Christina Ricci is afraid of indoor plants. I feel so bad for her. Afraid of indoor plants. I feel so bad for her. And so many other celebrities with phobias you'd never think they battle. So let's get back to, oh wait, let me look at some comments here. Let's see. Is fear and anxiety. Is fear and anxiety. Is fear and anxiety disorder is probably the question.
Fear itself is like a fear. It's a dread. It's a sense of forebodance. So you can be fearful of fear.
Huh? Fearful of fear?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you a question about fear and spirituality in a minute. Donna says she's afraid of fireworks. Is it the sound of the fireworks you're afraid of, Donna? Because those can be frightening, the sound of them. Now, I think we talked about the treatments for phobias, if they're debilitating enough. We talked about you use the word, you use meditation, you don't use medicine, but some people, medicine is helpful for some people, right? If they have bad enough. Treatment involves therapy techniques such as exposure therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy or relaxation techniques. They may be helpful in managing fears and gradually desensitizing oneself to triggers. Mm-hmm. Tell me, how is exposure therapy administered?
Well, you go to a therapist, and in a safe place, they expose you gradually to things. It may first be talking about it, describing it, and then they may show you a picture of it. Mm-hmm. Because, like, I don't want to even see a picture of a mouse, right, or anything like that. And, when we're thinking, okay, it's only a picture, but, gradually exposing you to it, it may be a small picture for a second or two, and taking it away, and then to the thing itself. Like we talked about trees or something. It may be pictures of trees and then actually going out to the park. But you start off in a safe, trusting environment. Mm-hmm. And even being able to talk about it, developing a good support system. And so I would say, for people who have those phobias, to find people that you can talk to about it, not someone that will laugh at you or make fun of you, because most of the time it doesn't even make sense to the person.
Yes.
And so I would encourage people to take that person and their phobia seriously, to offer support, ask them how they can be supportive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And encourage them and don't pressure them, because I have people that come to me with phobias. And so I ask them, what is it that you want to do about the situation? And I meet them where they are. I don't say to them, well, you should get over it. That's stupid or that's crazy. It doesn't make sense, because I intellectually understand that doesn't stop the way that the experience makes me feel. And so even with the cognitive behavioral therapy, it's what we tell ourselves about a thing that makes us behave a certain way.
Would it be helpful to tell somebody that that thing can't hurt you? You're afraid of that thing, but that thing can't really hurt you, because in their mind, that thing is a threat, right?
It all depends on the intensity, because most people intellectually understand that. I intellectually completely grasp the concept that a pair of curtains can't hurt me, they're, even if they fell on me, that kind of thing. And so that's why it's called an irrational fear. So that may or may not be helpful. It depends on the person and who's telling them. Like if it's a supportive person, if someone's talking you through some things. My husband doesn't try to talk me into the elevator thing, because he knows that it's more condescending for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do it anymore than you. If we've had to walk outside of a building and go all the way around to the stairs and have management open the stairway, I wouldn't do that if I honestly didn't feel a need to in that moment.
Wow. So rather than going in the elevator, you go outside the building, go around the back to go up the stairs.
And that just depends, on some days, like when I go to one doctor in particular, there's 4 flights of steps. I automatically go to the steps because I got on the elevator and, it was like a delayed response. And then it showed we've arrived on the 4th floor, but it was like 5 minutes before the doors open. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, no.
Wow.
And so it just depends. And my husband will say, but I'm with you. It doesn't have anything to do with that.
Donna says she has Pauline, fear of death, and struggle with agoraphobia. Pauline, I didn't know that. Fear of death. That's another pretty common one too, fear of death. The co-living life. Dolls with movable eyes spook me a bit. Might be due to watching horror movies as a child. Girl, I do not watch horror movies. I don't know what. And horror movies, I didn't used to be afraid. I used to think they were just hilarious and stupid. But now, I guess to somebody's point, I think it was H&D's point, getting older makes you a little bit more sensitive to some stuff. Now, I cannot watch a horror movie. Dr. Andrea's phone number again is on screen. And Yvette Boone has joined the party. Hello, Yvette. Now let's see. Okay. Identifying the root cause of the fear and developing coping strategies can also be beneficial. I don't think a lot of people can actually identify the root cause of the fears, right? In your case, you can't really identify the root cause, right, doctor?
It's all rooted in fear and anxiety, in the belief that something other than what actually could happen, is happening. So they're all rooted and grounded, in fear for the most part.
Yeah. Somebody asked, do you seek therapy for your fears? Yes, she was saying that she does. Do you still go to therapy for them, or have you completed your therapy treatment for your fears?
I've completed the treatment. From time to time, if I would need to go back, that is available. But I'm just aware that they're there.
Yeah.
Apart from the elevator thing, everything else, I just maintain my day. But I am aware, and I do have a plan.
You have
A coping plan, and it mostly involves the prayer, meditation, the relaxation, the deep breathing, all of those that bring on the physiological signs of anxiety.
okay. All right, guys. So otherwise, there is, of course, anti-anxiety medication if it's debilitating enough.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's plain old coping with the fear and living with it, dealing with it, pretty much like Andrea was saying. Um, um, and I suppose you could avoid the fearsome thing if it bothers you that much, like people with social anxiety or fear of heights. Let's
Mhm.
say will just avoid the thing they're afraid of. But if you can't avoid it, you just live with it and live anxious and unfortunate. Um, now, guys, remember that there is the Speak Your Piece. There is the Speak Your Piece venting sessions available. If you want to talk about your fears or anything else, there is a link in the description box. You can book a session there. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about, peer to peer, person to person. It is not therapy. I am not a therapist, but I am trained in crisis intervention. And so we can talk through some things. And also, our support group is meeting on Wednesday, the 29th at 7:30 p.m. Sign up for that. The link is also in the description box. If you can't use these services, you might know someone who could benefit. Um, I also would encourage you to like, share, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell and say hey or leave a comment or join the chat. Thank you. Now, I have this question, Dr. Andrea. Is there a spiritual aspect? Is there a spiritual aspect to um, fear?
Yes, there absolutely is. Sometimes it's just an uncommon fear based on post-traumatic stress, based on a perception that we have, and sometimes it has a root in being the demonic, and some people actually go through deliverance for it.
Wow. You're saying that sometimes fear is actually demonic and people have to go through deliverance for it. Now, guys, remember that Dr. Andrea is a biblical therapist, a faith based therapist as well. So she knows a little bit about the spirituality of things. Um, but some spiritual teachers would probably say that we shouldn't have fears if we have faith, right?
Absolutely.
But what do you say to that?
I would say that it's just like a person that may be an alcoholic or a drug addict. They may not be drinking, they don't pick up and put in, but they still have whatever the symptoms are that cause them to want to drink or use. And so just because you have those feelings, you may not act on them, but they're there. Like God could eradicate all of our fears or whatever, but mostly they're worked out, has been my experience with him.
Yes, 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 yes.
And it's not just snap your fingers and they're gone. It's a process.
It's a process, exactly. Let's see. Donna says deliverance like exorcism. I guess she's asking a question.
Well, I know in the Catholic Church, people refer to it as exorcism, but in the Christian denomination that I'm affiliated with, no, it isn't an exorcism per se. There are specific steps, And if you would like to know more information, you can certainly give me a call and we can talk about that.
Okay, and let me get the number again. Let me put the number up there again. If you're interested in learning more about the spiritual aspect of fears, give Dr. Andrea a call, 409-550-2211. All right. That's the link for the support group. It's also in the description box. Now, let's see. Additionally, in some religious contexts, fear may be associated with concepts such as sin, judgment, or the afterlife, leading individuals to confront their fears as part of their spiritual journey or seeking solace and protection through faith. Moreover, some people may perceive fear as a signal from their intuition or their higher self, guiding them to pay attention to certain aspects of their lives or warning them of potential dangers. In this sense, fear can be seen as a spiritual tool for self awareness and personal growth. Overall, the relationship between fear and spirituality can vary greatly depending on individual beliefs, practices, and cultural backgrounds. And then I wanted to know what part of our brain is activated as we experience fear. And actually, I wanted to know what actually happens in our brains and in our bodies as we experience fear. But I'll save that for another time. Maybe you can look it up yourself. What happens in our brains and our bodies when we experience such intense fears? But what part of our brain is related to fear? The amygdala is responsible for processing emotions such as fear. Additionally, other brain regions such as the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus also contribute to the regulation and modulation of fear responses, forming a complex neural network involved in fear processing and behavioral um, responses. So, Andrea, let me ask you, do you fear being alone?
No.
That's not a fear.
I don't. I prefer to have people around, but I don't have a fear of being alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, anybody else out there fear of um, being alone? Donna says, "Fear God is throughout the Bible." Okay, fear God is throughout the Bible. Um, The fear of being alone is known as autophobia or monophobia. It's a common fear that can vary intensely from person to person. For some, it may involve a discomfort with being physically alone, while for others, it may extend to a fear of emotional isolation or abandonment. And I think that that would be the opposite of social anxiety. Fear of being alone, as opposed to fear of being with people, social anxiety. And then I think we mentioned agoraphobia before. While it often involves a fear of open spaces or crowded places, it can also manifest as fear of leaving one's home altogether, right? So some people are afraid of leaving the house, and you think that that would be considered a disability, but it's not. Because how can you go out and function if you can't even leave the house? Why wouldn't that be considered a disability? But it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about me and Walmart, right? I don't like going to Walmart, right? But it's not a problem per se for me. I just don't like ugly places. I think Walmart is ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And noisy, hectic, unpeaceful places and spaces, right? I'm very affected and very vigilant of my environment at all times, and I do avoid Walmart. But there are people who are afraid of Walmart, and this comes under the category of megalophobia as well. While it might sound unusual, the fear of Walmart or any specific store can be a manifestation of a more generalized anxiety disorder or specific phobia. This fear can stem from various factors, including past negative experiences, feelings of overwhelm in crowded or busy environments, or fear of being unable to escape if needed. If someone experiences anxiety or panic attacks specifically related to the idea of going to Walmart or similar stores, it's essential to address these feelings with empathy and understanding. And listen, you guys, we have countless opportunities to be compassionate, gentle with each other, from survivors of trauma to people with phobias. We don't know what's going on with people. So let's try to be kinder in our dealings with each other. Make your comments on social media kinder. Let's be less judgmental. And I'm talking to myself too, right? So let's go through some of the not so common phobias. Trypophobia, fear of clustered holes or irregular patterns often found in natural objects like sponges, honeycombs, or certain plants. So there are people who fear the holes in certain, you know how some leaves have the holes in them? Yvette would know something about this. Or sponges that have the holes or the honeycombs. There are some people who are afraid of that. Then there's Ophidiophobia, the fear of snakes. We mentioned that earlier. And here's one I wish dog owners would be more cognizant of. Cynophobia, the fear of dogs. It's a specific phobia characterized by intense and irrational fear of dogs, which can I don't think that one is so irrational though, because a dog could hurt you, a dog could bite you, and that could hurt you. So, and then there's Ailurophobia, the fear of cats. And I think I may have more phobias. I think I might have, there goes Yvette. Monstera obliqua, that plant with the holes in it. Yeah. All right. So, fear of cats. And I was saying, I think I have more faith. I found out that I have more phobias than I realized because I'm definitely and seriously afraid of cats, right? So was Julius Caesar. And how the heck they know that? How they know that Julius Caesar was afraid of cats? Napoleon Bonaparte, Mussolini, Alexander the Great. How do they know that these people were afraid of cats? And someone in my family is afraid of birds, which is ornithophobia. And then there's bibliophobia, an intense and persistent fear of books or reading. Imagine being afraid of books and afraid of reading. Nyctophobia, the fear of darkness or night. Thanatophobia, the fear of death or the dying process. Nomophobia, fear of being without a mobile phone. I know this one is recent. Fear of being without a mobile phone or being unable to use it. They just came up with that one because I know just about everybody's experiencing that today. And then Gephyrophobia, the fear of bridges. Arachibutyrophobia. This one is weird. Fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of your mouth. I think these people just kind of make up some stuff. Then Xanthophobia, fear of the color yellow. Some people are afraid of the color yellow. Geniophobia, the fear of chins. Agoraphobia, the fear of beards. And then check this one out. Check this one out. Hippopotomonstrosesquippedaliophobia. I know I chopped that up. I absolutely chopped that one up. But it's the fear of long words. And the word, ironically, itself, the name is a long word. Don't let me try to pronounce it again. But there is a fear of long words. Oh my God. And ablutophobia, an extreme and irrational fear of bathing. This one tripped me out, that there are people who are afraid of bathing and washing and cleaning themselves. And it can be an extremely debilitating phobia that has significant impact on many aspects of an individual's lives. So, guys, do you think that many homeless people have this fear too? Do you think that many homeless people are afraid of bathing? I mean, I know people who don't particularly enjoy bathing. And I don't think it's as bad as a phobia. They just don't get the same enjoyment out of bathing as most of us do. Like I have a sister who loves to bathe several times a day, right? Then there's fear of clothing. There is chorophobia, fear of dancing. There is fear that somewhere, somehow, a duck is watching you. I swear. And then there's gerontophobia, the fear of old people. And I can see this one. It's the fear of aging or the fear of the elderly. And it can manifest as anxiety or discomfort around elderly individuals. Remember the movie As Good as It Gets? Who remembers that movie? That 1997 movie starring Jack Nicholson, when he was afraid of the cracks in the sidewalk, and that's called cracophobia. These phobias might seem unusual, but to those who experience them, they can be just as distressing as more common fears. Understanding and compassion are key in supporting individuals with any type of phobia. So, apparently, anyone can be afraid of anything. So I'm about to get come for. Somebody's gonna come for me with this comment this observation that I made. But if there are these unusual fears and rare fears, and anyone can be afraid of anything, why is it such an issue that some people are homophobic? Why is that an issue? Why are people not allowed to be afraid of homosexuals? If one can be afraid of clowns and have social phobias and any phobia for that matter, couldn't the fear of homosexuals be classified as a legitimate fear? So I asked ChatGPT. ChatGPT said homophobia is more of a social attitude than a fear. I said, okay, if that's the case, why do they attach the word phobia to it? And isn't social phobia a social attitude too? I'm just asking questions, you guys, and I'm gonna leave it at that because I don't mean to upset anyone. I'm just curious. And I think we've lost. Oh, here she's back. So don't forget to like the live or the replay and leave a comment, y'all. Thank you. Andrea, I want to thank you. Wait a minute. Let me read some comments. I used to have a fear of dogs too until I got one. Donna, you be killing your fears with extreme exposure. You'll be conquering your fears. You're afraid of heights, so you went and climbed Mount Fuji. And now you went and got your dog, so you're no longer afraid of dogs. Co-living life says, is introversion a manifestation of fears other than that of almost overstimulation from the outer world? Is introversion a manifestation of fears?
Not necessarily.
No. So introversion
It could be, but not necessarily.
introversion is where we like to spend a lot of time by ourselves, right? And we don't do well with external overstimulation. So, but it's not necessarily a fear of people or fear of being with people. But I think she's asking that because we had mentioned social phobias
Mm-hmm.
and social anxiety.
It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It depends on that individual. I know a lot of introverts that just happen to prefer their own company. In fact, they can be around other people, and you would never know that they are introverts.
Yeah.
It's a preference for them, but it
Yeah.
absolutely could be.
Yeah. Donna said ergophobia is an irrational and excessive fear of working that can cause a great deal of anxiety and distress. A fear of working? Maybe I have that. Maybe I have ergophobia. Maybe I have a fear of working because working does give me severe anxiety. Oh my God. And then Marilyn says, I leave my mobile phone at home if I forget to have it with me unless I need driving directions. I am not leaving my phone. I don't know if I have a fear of not having my phone. I don't know. Maybe I do. I think maybe everybody's kind of suffering from that one. All right. So I want to thank you guys for your comments in the chat. Andrea, I want to thank you for being willing to come on and share with us some of your own fears and for
Absolutely.
facilitate this conversation on phobias. Fears are something challenging for you that you process and live with every day. Um, right? So thank you for sharing all that with us. But tell us, what would you like to big up yourself for in this season?
I appreciate that I accept people 100% where they are, including myself. I don't try to impose any of my own beliefs or expectations on other people. And I think that provides them a safe place to come and talk with me and to support them in whatever their goal is, not my goal for them.
I love that. I love how you put that. Because one would think that being a faith based counselor and a biblical therapist, one might think maybe your therapy is going to be heavily faith based. But no, you're saying that you meet people where they are and you give them what you think that they need. Love it, love it, love it. All right, let me see what she says here. Honor men and women who died while serving in all branches of the U.S. military, especially our brothers and sisters. Yay. Donna says, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for participating, Donna. I love when you come, Donna. I love when you come visit us. And Marilyn has appeared the Big Up Yourself support group. We're having that on the 29th, Wednesday the 29th at 7:30 p.m. Here is Dr. Andrea Richard's phone number again, you guys. If you're looking for a reasonable, her prices are reasonable, guys. I said before that faith-based therapists are hard to find. So if your person prefers this type of therapy, here's a resource right here. She's CEO of Kingdom Concepts Empowerment Coaching, and she's a motivational speaker. She has flexible hours. She can work with you virtually with reasonable fees. I know how expensive therapy can be, but Andrea is sensitive to the affordability issues. So it's important to her that people who need counseling, people who need it the most has access, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I appreciate that about you. I'm appalled at some of the prices for counseling and therapy. Who can afford it? Who can afford that, you know? All right. And then the venting sessions again, you guys. The link is in the description. Um, my Patreon is there if you want to support a sister. That would be cool. I don't do coffee, but I do tea. And here is Dr. Andrea's number once again. Thanks to everyone who joined in the conversation. Thank you, as always, Marilyn. You are the bomb. Yvette, H&D was here. E of Brown Girls Invest 2 was here. Donna O'Neill, Co-Living Life. Thank you all. And we will see you next week on the Big Up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea.
Mm-hmm.